Most people overestimate what they can do in a day and underestimate what they can do in a lifetime. The truth is, our lives don't change in decades. They change in moments. Just one decision, one perspective, one choice can alter the trajectory of the next 50 years. And yet, when we're caught up in the business of life, we forget how powerful a single moment of reflection can be. Today, I want to ask you for something small, just 50 minutes. Not 50 hours, not 50 days, just 50 minutes. But what if those 50 minutes could unlock clarity, purpose, and direction for the next 50 years of your life? Imagine what would happen if you paused, if you reflected, if you gave yourself permission to ask, what kind of life do I really want to live? This isn't about working harder or chasing more. It's about alignment. It's about taking a step back to see the bigger picture, to understand the why behind the choices you make. Because when your why is clear, your next 50 years won't just happen by accident. They'll happen by design. And today, those 50 minutes start now. We often think transformation requires years of effort, but in truth, it begins with a single defining moment. One spark of clarity can redirect an entire life. Think about people who describe the turning points in their journeys. A conversation with a mentor, a book that changed their perspective, a moment of failure that forced them to reimagine everything, or even a quiet pause when they finally realized what really mattered. These moments are rarely dramatic to the outside world, but to the person experiencing them, they are everything. They carry the weight of new beginnings, the courage of new decisions, and the power to shape the trajectory of decades to come. Clarity is not about suddenly knowing every step of the path ahead. It is about recognizing the direction in which you must begin walking. Most of us get stuck because we think we need the full map before we start. But clarity is not the full map, it's the compass. Once you have the compass, the journey becomes possible. That compass often appears in a single moment. An insight, a realization, an awakening. What happens in that instant doesn't just alter what you think, it alters who you are becoming. Many people can live their entire lives without ever pausing to let that clarity emerge. They rush from task to task, from responsibility to responsibility, and end up mistaking motion for progress. But movement without direction is simply wandering. One moment of clarity saves years of wandering. It provides alignment between your actions and your purpose, ensuring that your energy is not scattered but concentrated on what truly matters. The most fulfilled individuals you'll ever meet are not those who had every resource, every advantage, or every opportunity handed to them. They are the ones who found clarity early, who decided what kind of life they wanted, and then spent the rest of their years moving consistently in that direction. Consider the story of someone who, after years of chasing success, paused to ask themselves why they wanted it in the first place. In that pause, they realized their pursuit wasn't truly about wealth or recognition. It was about security, about freedom, about contribution. That one moment of clarity reframed everything. Success stopped being an endless chase and became a purposeful journey. Instead of working themselves to exhaustion for a hollow prize, they began aligning their work with their values, their relationships with their deepest needs, and their time with what they wanted to stand for. The external results followed, but more importantly, the inner peace arrived. This is the power of clarity. It simplifies. It strips away the noise and distractions. It creates focus where there was once chaos. And in doing so, it doesn't just change the present moment, it sets the course for the next season of life. Think about the decisions that last decades. The career paths you choose, the relationships you build, the values you hold, the risks you take, the contributions you make to others. Each of those life-shaping choices begins with a moment when you finally see clearly. Without that clarity, you drift into decisions by default. With it, you design your future by intention. The remarkable truth is that clarity is available to all of us. It doesn't require genius, wealth, or extraordinary circumstances. It requires presence. It requires the courage to pause, to reflect, and to listen to the inner voice that is often drowned out by the noise of the world. And when you allow that clarity to arrive, it doesn't just give you answers, it gives you direction, energy, and purpose. One moment can change not only the next day, but the next 50 years. We often imagine that only grand gestures or massive actions lead to transformation, but the truth is, the small investments we make every single day are what shape the quality of our entire lives. Time is the one resource we all share equally, yet how we choose to invest it determines whether our lives are built on fulfillment or regret. Just as compound interest grows quietly and consistently over time, the way we use our minutes and hours compounds into decades. A few minutes each day spent with intention can alter the next 50 years. Think about health. No one becomes fit or unhealthy overnight. It is the cumulative effect of thousands of tiny choices. The decision to go for a walk instead of sitting still, to eat nourishing food instead of what is convenient, to rest when your body asks for recovery instead of ignoring the signals. These choices may seem insignificant in isolation, but stacked together over years, they shape not only the body but also the quality of life. The same principle applies to learning. Reading a few pages a day, listening to one meaningful conversation, or asking a single thoughtful question may not feel transformative in the moment. But when those small investments are made consistently, they expand into wisdom, skill, and perspective that others may spend a lifetime chasing. The challenge is that we are drawn to the dramatic, the quick fixes, the overnight changes. We want to sprint toward results, but life rewards consistency more than intensity. An hour of reflection once in a lifetime will never equal the power of 10 minutes of reflection practiced every day. A single burst of effort quickly fades, but the steady rhythm of daily investment builds unstoppable momentum. It is the rhythm that creates resilience, and it is resilience that carries us through decades. Imagine the difference between someone who spends 10 minutes a day nurturing their relationships and someone who assumes love will take care of itself. 10 minutes of listening, of expressing gratitude, of being present with those who matter, may not appear as much in the moment. But after years, those minutes compound into trust, depth, and unshakable bonds. On the other hand, neglect accumulates too. Just as positive investments compound, so do the costs of neglect. The minutes we fail to invest add up to distance, disconnection, and regret. The same principle is true with purpose and contribution. A person who dedicates even a fraction of their time to serving others, to mentoring, to giving back, may not feel the impact in a single day. But look at them 50 years later, and you will see a legacy that stretches across generations. Small seeds planted daily grow into forests of influence. The exponential return comes not because the actions were grand, but because they were repeated with faith and consistency. The beauty of this truth is that anyone can begin at any moment. It doesn't matter if you feel behind or overwhelmed. It doesn't matter if you think you've wasted years. What matters is that you recognize the compounding effect of small investments starting now. The earlier you start, the greater the return. But it is never too late. Even in the later chapters of life, minutes invested with purpose create ripples that extend beyond a single lifetime. The return may not always be visible immediately, but like the seeds underground, growth is happening in ways unseen until one day the results are undeniable. This is why guarding your time matters. This is why being intentional with even the smallest portions of your day is powerful. Because the truth is, minutes are not just minutes. They are the raw material of years, and years are the raw material of a life. When you invest them wisely, consistently, and purposefully, they create exponential returns you cannot imagine when you start. In a world that glorifies business, reflection is often misunderstood. We're taught to equate productivity with constant action, movement, and output. If we're not doing something, we assume we're falling behind. But the truth is, The most powerful decisions, the most meaningful breakthroughs, and the most transformative shifts in life rarely come when we are rushing. They arrive in moments of stillness, when we allow ourselves to pause and reflect. Reflection is not about stepping away from life, it is about stepping into it with greater clarity and purpose. When we look back on the choices that shaped our lives, it's rarely the hurried, reactive moments that stand out. It's the times when we slowed down enough to ask the deeper questions. Who am I becoming? Why am I doing what I am doing? Where is this path leading me? These questions are not luxuries, they are necessities. They act as the blueprint for the future. Without reflection, we live reactively, constantly pulled by external pressures, trends, and demands. With reflection, we begin to live intentionally, designing the future, instead of stumbling into it by default. Think about an architect before building a structure. No one would call it a waste of time when the architect spends hours drawing plans, measuring, visualizing, and rethinking. In fact, those hours are what prevent disaster. The same is true for our lives. Reflection is the planning stage, the design work, the careful consideration that ensures we don't spend years building something we never wanted in the first place. Without it, we risk pouring our energy into the wrong pursuits, only to realize later that success without fulfillment feels like failure in disguise. What makes reflection powerful is not just looking backward, but using the past to inform the future. Reflection turns experiences into lessons. It transforms mistakes into wisdom. It allows us to recognize patterns, the behaviors, habits, and decisions that are either moving us closer to our purpose or pulling us further away. Without reflection, time passes but growth does not. With reflection, every experience becomes a stepping stone, no matter how difficult or painful. It's easy to dismiss reflection because it doesn't give the immediate rush of productivity. Sitting in silence, journaling, meditating, or simply asking yourself hard questions may not feel like progress compared to answering emails, attending meetings, or crossing items off a to-do list. But reflection is not about efficiency in the moment. It is about effectiveness in the long run. A person who spends consistent time reflecting may move slower at first, but they move in the right direction. And over the span of decades, the difference between speed and direction becomes the difference between regret and fulfillment. Consider the leaders, creators, and thinkers who have left lasting impact. Nearly all of them had practices of reflection. Some journaled, some walked in solitude, some prayed, some engaged in deep conversations, but all of them carved out time to pause. They understood that reflection was not wasted time, but invested time. They knew that in the silence, ideas would form, clarity would emerge, and vision would sharpen. Without reflection, they would have been swept away by distractions, just like everyone else. Instead, reflection anchored them to their deeper purpose. This is why reflection is one of the most powerful tools we have for shaping the future. It forces us to stop drifting and to start designing. It turns the abstract idea of someday into the concrete actions of today. And though the world may tell us to hurry, to keep moving, to stay busy, reflection teaches us to slow down so that when we do move, we move with intention. There is a reason why some people seem to face challenges with resilience, while others crumble under the weight of the same obstacles. It is not that they are stronger, smarter, or luckier. It is that they are guided by something deeper than the immediate difficulty in front of them. They have clarity of purpose. They know why they are doing what they are doing, and because of that, the path forward becomes lighter, even if it remains difficult. When the why is clear, the how begins to take care of itself. Think of someone training for a marathon. Waking up at 5 a.m. to run in the cold is never easy. The body resists, the mind complains, and excuses are abundant. But if the runner's why is clear, maybe it's the dream of crossing the finish line, proving to themselves that they can do it, or running for a cause greater than themselves, then the discomfort becomes bearable. The miles are still long, the mornings are still early, but the reason fuels the discipline. Without the why, the same training becomes unbearable. The how is too heavy when there is no why. In life, we often jump into the how before we clarify the why. We focus on strategies, tools, and techniques. We ask, how do I succeed? How do I grow? How do I achieve this goal? But without first asking, why do I want this? The answers to the how will always feel hollow. Purpose gives meaning to effort. It transforms challenges into opportunities and setbacks into lessons. The moment you understand why you want to achieve something, the steps you must take, no matter how difficult. Stop feeling like punishment and start feeling like progress. This is true in every area of life. In relationships, when you know why you are committed. Whether it's to love, to grow together, to build a family, to support one another. The effort of communication, patience, and compromise no longer feels like sacrifice, it feels like investment. In work, when you understand why your contribution matters, even the smallest task takes on meaning. And in personal growth, when you know why you are striving to become better, the struggles along the way are redefined as part of the journey, not obstacles to it. The power of knowing your why is that it creates endurance. Motivation fades quickly, but purpose sustains. When life tests you, and it always will, motivation alone is not enough to carry you through. Motivation asks for comfort, purpose demands resilience. When the why is clear, you find strength you didn't know you had. You push through resistance not because it is easy, but because it is worth it. The most inspiring leaders and visionaries have always been those who began with why. They didn't rally people by explaining every detail of how something would be done. They inspired by painting a clear picture of why it mattered. When the why is strong enough, people figure out the how. And the same principle applies to your own life. If you spend your time chasing goals without purpose, you will always feel exhausted. But if you chase goals rooted in why, you will feel alive even in the struggle. Clarity of why is not something you stumble upon accidentally, it is something you choose to discover. It takes reflection, honesty, and courage. It requires peeling back the layers of expectation, ego, and fear to uncover what truly drives you. And once you find it, everything else begins to align. The steps, the strategies, the sacrifices, they may still be demanding, but they no longer feel meaningless. They become part of a greater mission that gives your life depth, direction, and fulfillment. Most people don't set out to live a life of regret. Yet if you look closely, so many arrive at the later years of their journey carrying the weight of missed chances, unspoken words, and unlived dreams. It's rarely because they made the wrong choices on purpose. More often, it's because they never made conscious choices at all. They allowed life to happen to them rather than creating life for themselves. Living by accident is not about catastrophe, it's about drifting. It's about letting circumstances, other people's opinions, or the momentum of the world dictate your path. And when you drift, you eventually wake up realizing that you've ended up somewhere you never truly wanted to be. Living by design is the opposite. It doesn't mean you control every detail, because life will always bring unpredictability, but it does mean you have a direction. It means you've chosen what matters most to you, and you align your actions, habits, and decisions around it. When you live by design, you're not immune to challenges, but you are prepared for them. You're not free from failure, but you know how to rise from it because your path has meaning. Fulfillment does not come from avoiding difficulty, but from facing it in the pursuit of something you've consciously chosen. The difference between a life by accident and a life by design often begins with awareness. Many people never stop to ask themselves the most important questions. What do I value? What kind of impact do I want to make? What legacy do I want to leave? Without these questions, days turn into weeks, weeks into years, and years into decades of simply reacting. Work consumes you because it was the job offered, not the work you dreamed of. Relationships drift because they were convenient, not intentional. Dreams fade because they were postponed until someday, a day that never comes. Living this way is like being in a boat without a rudder. You may still move, but it's the current that decides your destination, not you. Living by design requires intention. It asks you to pause, to reflect, and to choose. It's deciding not to live by default, but by design. Imagine someone who takes the time to clarify their values: family, growth, contribution, creativity. Every decision they make is filtered through those values. They may turn down opportunities that don't align, even if they are lucrative. They may prioritize time with loved ones over temporary gains. They may dedicate energy to pursuits that bring meaning rather than applause. From the outside, these choices may look difficult, but from the inside, they bring peace because they are aligned with a deeper design. The truth is, accidents in life will always happen. Unexpected events, losses, and challenges are part of the human story. But a life by design doesn't mean avoiding accidents, it means not living accidentally. When you live with intention, even when surprises come, you know how to navigate them. You bend without breaking. You adjust without losing yourself. And most importantly, when you look back, you see not just what happened to you, but what you chose, what you created, and what you stood for. Fulfillment is not about having everything go perfectly. It is about living in alignment with what matters most. It is about looking back years from now and knowing that your days were not wasted, that you didn't drift through life on autopilot, but that you took the time to design a life that reflected your values, your passions, and your purpose. We often underestimate the power of a single moment. We tell ourselves that transformation takes years, that change requires massive effort, that purpose is something discovered after decades of searching. Yet the truth is, sometimes all it takes is a short window of intentional focus to set the course for an entire lifetime. 50 minutes today, given fully to reflection, to clarity, to decision-making, can open the door to 50 years of purpose. That is the extraordinary return on investment that time, when used with intention, can bring. Think about how easily we spend 50 minutes without realizing it. We scroll through screens, watch something forgettable, or lose ourselves in distractions that leave no lasting imprint. Time slips away unnoticed. But when those same 50 minutes are redirected toward asking the right questions, they transform. What do I truly value? What kind of life do I want to create? What relationships do I want to nurture? What contribution do I want to leave behind? These questions, answered honestly in just one sitting, can become the foundation for every choice that follows. 50 minutes may not feel like much in the scope of a lifetime, but it carries disproportionate weight. Because in that space, you are not just passing time, you are shaping the future. Imagine a ship setting out to sea. A 1-degree shift in its course, decided at the beginning, determines whether it reaches its destination or ends up thousands of miles away. Reflection works the same way. In just under an hour, you can make decisions that shift your trajectory, aligning you toward fulfillment instead of regret, purpose instead of drift. The beauty of this idea is that it requires no special resources. Anyone can give themselves 50 minutes. It doesn't demand money, talent, or privilege. What it does demand is presence. It requires the willingness to pause in a world that constantly tells you to move faster. It asks for courage to look inward instead of always looking outward. It requires honesty with yourself, because the answers you discover may challenge you to let go of what no longer serves you and embrace what you've been avoiding. Those 50 minutes are not about solving everything. They are about beginning. They are about carving out a sacred space to think beyond today, beyond the endless demands of the moment, and to ask, what story do I want my life to tell when 50 years have passed? Too often, we assume we will find time later to figure this out. But later rarely comes. Life fills itself with noise and distractions unless we intentionally create space for clarity. That is why giving yourself 50 minutes now is not a delay from life. It is the very act of designing the next chapter of your life. Consider how many of history's most significant changes began in moments of reflection. Leaders crafted visions that inspired movements. Innovators saw possibilities that changed industries. Individuals decided to shift their lives in ways that seemed small at the time but grew into legacies. Behind each of those stories was a pause, a moment of clarity, a decision made in stillness. Your 50 minutes hold that same potential. They can help you recognize what you've been ignoring, commit to what truly matters, and design the path that will carry you forward for decades. Time, when invested with purpose, expands in value. 50 minutes today is not just 50 minutes lost from your schedule. It is 50 years gained in alignment, direction, and meaning. When you choose to pause now, to give yourself this space, you are not simply spending time, you are unlocking a lifetime.